everyone. Welcome to Conquer the Clutter podcast for December 28th. By the time you're listening to this, I will be in Uganda, but I didn't want you not to have the last piece of the series we've been doing on attachment, secure and insecure. So I want to carry on now. And for those people who have requested the written format of the material, Hafsa's working on it. She's creating it into a document, and she will be sending it to you at the email addresses that you left for us. We're happy to do that this time to make sure you have the complete set of information on attachment. Those other types of security that we talked about last week, job security, financial security, physical security, while they are very important, they are not sufficient in and of themselves to focus all of our attention, all of our effort to invest in. Also, we need, in addition to those concrete kind of practical types of security, we need internal and emotional security. Why? Because it is the internal and emotional security that gives us the fuel to keep functioning, especially when life gets difficult and challenges come our way. They come our way in ways that many people tell me challenge their faith and their trust in themselves. Internal and emotional security is the only thing that we can always depend on because we own it. Inner security feels like calm, right? It doesn't feel like you're stuck in a roiling turmoil. Even when the world isn't cooperating, you can still access that internal solid sense of self-worth. Even when you're 100% in the wrong about something, you can access that sense of solidness, that you're worth the effort, you're worth overcoming, you're worth getting started and living out the dreams and goals you have. That inner security that we have helps us manage, right? Sometimes we feel, we say that things, negative things, unfortunate things happen in a series of three. It seems that way at the time. And when you're on number 2 and number 3, and you can't find your bearings, sometimes it feels like you're in the crosshairs of outward external events that are beyond your control. Being able to be self-accepting enough to appreciate yourself, to tell yourself that you're worth and you're worthy and you're still okay, even if things aren't going well for you, even if things aren't going well for you because you've made mistakes. Despite our inevitable faults, being able to remain okay with ourselves, being who we really are, the good, the bad, and the indifferent, all right? No one is perfect. And being able to hold on to that with that self-acceptance, with self-respect. Now, we're not talking about perfectionistically, finding fault with yourself, doubting and criticizing yourself into a corner where the only way out is some ideal perfect outcome that almost never exists in real life. And saving yourself the work that is necessary to recover from feeling ashamed. Why? Because in these episodes in life where things don't go well, where we don't perform up to what we're capable of, allowing yourself to come away from that feeling that you aren't good enough, and therefore you can't find the security and the okayness and the calm in yourself. You search for it for security, for reassurance, for comfort. And we never can find enough of it if we don't have that sense of self-esteem, enough self-esteem, enough self-respect. All right. Not worrying when we don't have all the answers right up front. And if we don't have all the answers, or we don't have things figured out exactly the way that we can imagine the outcome demands, then we can't start. All right. We don't allow ourselves to start and have faith in ourselves that as we run these little experiments through life, trying something new, trying a different way to overcome. If we can't do that, if we can't take that risk, you almost never have all of the answers and all of the resources up front. Do you realize what a trap that is for us? Life gets to feel like right up front, you need a guarantee before you'll take that chance. Every element we need for success needs to be right in front of you, easily accessible. And not only do you need that in front of you, those guarantees in front of you, you also need to have all the skills and abilities, right? What about just getting off of your own back and gradually building baby step experiments? I'm going to try this. I'm going to see. I'm going to work 15 minutes a day at a project, and I'm going to stop myself. And when I can do that a few times, I'm going to realize that really and truly, if I work from my strength and I respect the pace that my mental and physical energy and focus allows, I actually can cope. Perfectly? No. Adequately? Sometimes not, but well enough. And gradually, when we repeat those experiments and we set the pace and we set the task reasonably, how much steam do you have in the tank before you started? And even when you're working at it and you feel that you're on a roll, you save some of the energy and the focus for other things that will also add positively to your life, like joy, fun, play, like reminding yourself that you are a learning, growing, developing human being. And in doing that, in creating that balance, all right, we begin to feel safe. We feel safe from the opinions and judgments, of others. Why? It's a really good thing, all right, when we can be okay despite someone else's negative opinion. Because anyone who judges us, I want you to recognize those that judge are almost always in their own way, at least as much imperfect as you are. Everyone has their element of imperfection. Sometimes our imperfections, all right, are the most endearing part of ourselves. Humility, for instance, all right? And also, even people who seem to have all the answers, in their own way, they are just as imperfect, despite the fact that they seem very certain of their authoritativeness. You are more than your shortcomings and faults. I am more than my shortcomings and faults. And as I undertake this project to show you, as imperfect as I am, I'm going to take on gorilla trekking. I'm going to take on doing things that I have never done before. And maybe I only have partial ability, but I'm going to have to improvise, and I'm going to have to find a way around and through the challenges. And I ask you to do the same thing. Last week, I asked you to write down a few things that were your strength, at least 3. And then I asked you to identify a project, a small, manageable project that for the 10, 12 days that I'm away, you can work on as well with baby steps. Maybe developing new skills and abilities, gathering better knowledge, perhaps. Maybe that failure or that lack of success is actually going to teach you that you don't have enough good information. Maybe it's not you that is lacking. Maybe it's the plan that is lacking. All right. That is always the place to go first. So rather than when things don't work out, rather than making it about our shortcomings and faults, all right, we're often not fully responsible, all right, of heading into a project and then finding yourself overwhelmed. When was the last time that happened to you? And did you, when you realized that this was not working well, and maybe you were frustrated, did you also start to allow insecurity and feelings of personal inadequacy to creep in? That happens to all of us, but I want you to nip that one in the bud because it isn't leading anywhere that is going to help you. Always work from your strengths, and you have them. That's why I asked you to list some of your strongest strengths. Never go to fear. Our internal sense of security will increase if we can head off that punishing self-doubt and the conclusion that it isn't the plan or the resources that are inadequate. It has to be us. Don't bring it home. Don't make it personal. Go back to the drawing board and look at the plan. Look at the knowledge base that you have. Maybe you misjudged what kind of project this project was going to require in the way of knowledge and resources. All right. The best way to make progress is to balance our internal sense of being competent enough and having the right and enough resources. Now, maybe that partial failure or total failure actually is a course correction, and it's meant to teach you something about this goal you have, that maybe you need to develop further skills. Maybe you're going about it the wrong way. Maybe you are over challenging yourself. You don't actually have the mental or physical focus and energy. Maybe you've gotten through on a roll and then you can't go back to it because you overdid it, and the association you have in your mind is coming away from that work period exhausted mentally and physically. Overcoming challenges tells us something about our family stories too. All right. What are the stories in your family? Be very aware of them. Were they stories of overcoming hardship? Were they stories of enduring? Or were they stories of victimhood? All right. We carry those stories. We, in a subtle, vague kind of way, we make them part of our backdrop. It's impossible not to have some secure attachment experiences in your childhood. All right. There is no child that I have ever met, and God help those that this isn't true of, but it almost certainly is not you and I that had nothing but insecure attachment. So remember, the insecure attachment is reworkable. The secure attachment, it doesn't have to stay with us unless we hold on to it. It doesn't have to stay with us through adulthood. And the secure attachment does stay solidly with us. It might be vaguely just a sense, an impression, a memory from your past. Whatever secure attachment experiences you've had in your childhood, each and every one of them, whether you can name them, see them, and remember them or not, supports you to learn to become good parents to yourself. Because the truth is, none of us had perfect parenting. All right. Some of the unluckier ones among us haven't had really good parenting either. We each have to reparent ourselves in some ways, every single person, myself included, because no one can know us and understand us like we do ourselves. All right. And only we can give ourselves what we really truly need. Parents can try, but quite often they've got their own needs, or the context of our needing something was a time when they were unavailable or poorly resourced internally through stresses and challenges of their own. All right. So we are the only ones who can meet the unmet needs of our own earlier years. And that's really important. All right. Because meeting those unmet needs, reparenting ourselves in some ways that we require, that we feel, we sense are lacking, are really important. And they are also very realistic goals. So what about adverse childhood experiences occurring after the early years? What about that? Because it isn't like we just had infant, baby, toddler experiences. That parenting and the world didn't change. So every so often, what do they say? Negatives come in threes. Sooner or later, it's the ebb and flow of life. There's positive and then not so positive. So what about those adverse childhood experiences that occur after the early years, right? The effects of an adverse childhood experience can stay with us from our earliest years. By the age of 3 and 4, both sides of our brain now are connected. It's not like it was when we were 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. And with both sides of our brain now connected by the age of 4, all right, now we are sufficiently developed. And once both sides of the child's brain are developed, further effects of the adverse childhood experiences can set in if there's no adequate support. This is where the insidiousness of low self-esteem and shame starts. All right, we're old enough at 4 to start to feel threatened badly about ourselves, frustrated, and ashamed when we don't please our parents, when we don't do things well. And those feelings, if you didn't have the support to interrupt them getting a hold on you, can become ingrained either implicitly, somebody actually is saying, shame on you, that's wrong, and other demeaning and degrading expressions. You'll never amount to anything. You never were good at that. I can't trust you, whatever. All right. Explicitly, that's explicitly. Implicitly is the feeling that we take away from through the reactions of others. So implicitly, we start to put messages or feedback or body language together, and we assign a meaning. For example, if you lived with a parent who was harshly critical, all right? You can explicitly imprint and reinforce already low self-esteem, okay? Because it's criticize, 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 criticize. They never mention the positives. They never mention the 99% you got. It's all about what's missing. Can you understand that that's about them? That was never about you. But in that formative stage, even by the age of 3 and 4, we can start to imprint on that. All right. Remember, the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, don't have to stay with us. We have such thing as neuroplasticity. Our brain is able to morph and change and grow and heal. All right. But whatever positive, secure attachment experiences we had, they solidify, they hold on. So ask yourself now, what do you need right now? What do you need to control the voices on the committee, those critical people? Let's take, for example, the experience of shame, okay? Have you known people who are outwardly, obviously, credibly intelligent, they're pleasant, they're attractive, and they appear very successful, all right, in the world's eyes? But have you ever really gotten to know anybody like that and found out that to themselves, they felt intensely inadequate? They felt like they were a chameleon, like they were faking it, like they were acting as opposed to having a solid sense of self. Shame helps to explain this. Shame is closely related to insecure attachment and low self-esteem, both side effects of the adverse childhood experiences. All right. So if you are someone who goes to shame and then integrates that, internalizes it into low self-esteem, I want you to go back. I want you to just try something akin to meditation and see what memories, what messages, what words come up. Remember, it's really important. You are not swilling in the past. You're not. What you're doing is trying to let your unconscious give you what you need. It's all down there, all right? And remember that the side effects from adverse childhood experiences are remakeable. They don't have to stay with you unless you hold on to them. The workbooks that I recommended, the 2 workbooks, are wonderful, wonderful resources for helping you work through those things. And first, before you get to the books, before you start those exercises, let's look at this whole thing more closely, that shame. Shame differs from guilt. Our logical mind accepts appropriate guilt. We did something, it was wrong. Maybe we knew it, maybe we didn't. We appropriately feel guilty, all right? When we acknowledge that we've done something wrong, that feeling of guilt, perfectly appropriate. But we do something different with it, all right? Because it motivates us to take appropriate corrective action. However, the logical mind is not fully developed in the early years. And in the later years of childhood, that critical parenting style, that never measuring up against a sibling, that toxic stress can shut down our logical mind. The brain at that age is not developed for logic. So the meaning you took away from whatever the failings, whatever the measured imperfections, whatever the criticism was about, all right? You couldn't handle it logically. It wasn't age appropriate for you to be able to do that. Therefore, the meanings that you have attached to those memories, those sensations, are not real. They are not accurate. All right. They lack logic, especially when our physical and emotional survival is at stake. You get punished enough, you get compared enough, you get a very, very sensitive reaction. All right. And sometimes perhaps we anticipate it and we overreact. All right. Because it's so painful and we so much want to avoid it. This opens us up for shame to develop. Shame is a sense of feeling bad right to our core, all right? And when we combine that together with harsh and unfair, inaccurate self-judgment or self-contempt, depending on how harsh the criticism, that repeated criticism was, shame can be imprinted implicitly in the right side of the brain, all right? At a feeling level, remember that the brain at this age is not geared developmentally for logic. So at a feeling level or emotions, bodily sensations, these are the things that I want you to be very aware of when you try those little periods of quiet meditation. Just asking all parts of yourself to send up what you need to know, to just untie it, let it go, let it come to the surface. And this happens as a result, the shame and self-contempt at a feeling level, all right, emotional level, is a result of repeated attachment disruptions. It's an indicator that you had pretty significant and pretty persistent insecure attachment within 18 months of life, right up to 3 or 4. An infant might internalize an abusive or neglectful caregiver. They're verbal, but they're also their nonverbal messages, all right? And that's what that infant is picking up. That is what they are reading their survival capability against. That is what communication is to an infant, all right? And even though they're not verbal necessarily, the child isn't really verbal and certainly isn't logical, sometimes those messages can line up as they're not valued. The child feels at a feeling level, an emotional level, as though they're not valued, they don't matter, all right? While realistic guilt is something else from shame. Guilt can promote well-being. Shame never does, all right? Shame is hating yourself, punishing yourself. Guilt is taking responsibility. Shame is part of your feelings self. And it plays out in many ways, all right? And most of those ways overlap with evidence of insecure attachment. Shame is ingrained in the early years, all right? And typically it resists external success. You can be as successful as it's possible to be, but when you feel shame and you hold on to it at a feeling level, there's no amount of success that will make up for it. You can be highly educated. You can be very accomplished. No matter how successful you are, that persistent sense of shame can lurk inside. Now, it also typically doesn't respond to verbal persuasion. Can you see where I'm going with this? So you can't think and logic your way out of it, and you can't verbally talk yourself out of it, All right. So it doesn't respond well to you or others trying to talk you out of feeling ashamed. Healing shame is more about healing your heart. And as you'll soon see, shame is changed by holding it with acceptance. Accept shame. Try to understand the shame. You're adding that logic level that you weren't capable of before. And compassion. Compassion is forgiveness. It is letting go of any need, no matter who imprinted you with it, all right? That you don't have to be perfect. And it allows you then to rewrite, all right, the memories, the sensations, the feelings. And that will allow new, remember all the talk we did about brain function? It will allow and associate itself with developing new neural pathways, neuroplasticity. The brain can heal, all right? You will very soon learn the skills to do just that. I'm going to focus you back to the workbooks, all right? And the recovery workbook. Heal the hidden wounds from childhood. You can. The fact that the brain can heal through neuroplasticity, all right, look up neuroplasticity. It is doable. It is manageable. It is accomplishable. And that will immensely affect both your mental health and your physical health. It helps to refuel you as well so that you don't have to stay stuck, overwhelmed, feeling empty. So, what are the lessons so far? Research is clear. Childhood adversity creates attachment disruptions. All right. And because the childhood brain is not developed for logic, it's not ready yet to be logical, the result is absorbing the pain, absorbing the messages, absorbing the criticism, absorbing the rejection, the inadequacy, the not being something. And it results in a loss of self-esteem that is repairable. It can also shape, obviously, it can also shape your mental state. And that can affect your health decades later. Now you know why I ask you to learn to write down your strengths, because working from your strengths, making them concrete in front of you, whatever I don't do well, whatever work I haven't finished, whatever goals I haven't met, these positives are also true about me. And reminding yourself of your strengths can help you to rewrite the logic and the messages and the neural pathways in your brain. Many people have done it before you, all right? Why? So that brain can become more resilient to stress. Stress isn't going anywhere, people. Stress and change is a fact of life, all right? If you're waiting for a less stressful period, it isn't coming. And if it does come, it isn't lasting very long. In one form or another, stress and change is a matter of daily life. But when you don't get knocked out of the game, when you don't take it and wear it like a shameful tattoo, all right? When you observe it, when you accept it, when you have compassion for yourself and anybody else who is imperfect, that gives you the ability, a leg up to develop perspective. And perspective is a huge aid to success. Experiencing childhood adversity is not all bad news. Right? It's not all good news either, but it's not all bad news. Adverse childhood experiences can help us grow stronger, can help us become resilient, can help us learn new skills, sometimes out of desperation, that we lacked back then. Not the least of which, and I repeat myself, is acquiring resilience, the ability to bounce back, the ability to recover without having to hit rock bottom. Constructive change is far more likely to occur when we understand from our heart, because we accept, because we have compassion for ourselves and others who are imperfect. And we do that. We take that little sidestep to recover and heal before moving on. And we gain perspective on our early years, the things that did happen and the things that shouldn't have happened. All right. Anyone can be overwhelmed by toxic stress. It is not a sign of personal inadequacy or defeat. All right. Especially in the earlier years. We didn't have coping skills then. We didn't even know what coping skills were. And we didn't learn them as well in this state of not mattering, not being responded to consistently by a positive caregiver. All right. Now, without that positive protective caregiver, all right, we still survived. All right. Some of us a little more banged up than others. However, there's a good reason for hope. Every pain or hurt resulting from toxic stress can be substantially lessened. Even decades later, I promise you it's possible. All right. Nobody had a perfect childhood. Things happen. Things are done to us, either passively or actively. The brain is healable. Look up the word neuroplasticity. Remember, I've talked about it before. Neuroplasticity is the mechanism that can help us rewire our brain. That's why I did all that talk about neural pathways and brain chemistry. That's why I researched until I found 2 really great workbooks to lead you through it. In rewiring, we can heal the wounds that we have. We can find out what the wounds, some of them are, by memory, by sensation, by feelings, all right, by doing those little meditation exercises, just letting it come up. Speak to yourself, all parts of myself. All parts of myself, will you send me what I need? All right. But we have to have the courage to address them. Not be afraid. To observe. You don't have to do anything about it. To allow them to come up and be acknowledged and understood. Maybe the context, sometimes one memory triggers another memory. And if that happens a few times, you have a better idea of the context that maybe not having the most receptive or the most positive caregiver. Maybe it was deliberate. Maybe it wasn't, but you understand context is everything. All right. So the solution to rewire harmful programming in the brain, to change the way we experience ourselves, to give ourselves a little more slack. What heals the traumatized brain? mature love, grown-up love for oneself as a flawed, imperfect human being. I want you to be able to say about yourself and to yourself, I am a worthy, flawed, imperfect human being trying to do better in the ways that are important to me. And we start by caring for ourselves and being caring and non-judgmental of others. Respecting ourselves, being respecting of others. Accepting ourselves, flawed and imperfect, and accepting others as flawed and imperfect, which does not mean they get to take advantage of you or harm you in some way. Go back. If you're not clear about that, you go back to the podcasts on boundaries and limits, healthy boundaries and limits, compassion, all right, and loving kindness. All of those things, when we apply them to ourselves and we allow them to be true for others as well, will change our brain and our bodies will benefit as well. So wherever I am right now, people, my body is probably taxed through airfare. I mean, 24-hour flights, being in a climate that I'm a Canadian for a reason. I like cool weather and I like wind. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of that. So it's going to be an adjustment, but I welcome it. I embrace it. All right. And I shall overcome. And I hope in the ways that I will be thrown into the mix of challenges, I hope that I'm able to motivate you to find in yourself the things you need to overcome the challenges that you're facing right now and help you step by step do what's needed. Give yourself what you need. Reach your goal, whatever it is. You take care. I'm going to try very, very hard that our next podcast is live from Uganda. I'll just be talking about guerrilla stuff and Africa and whatever. It won't have a lot to do with hoarding or clutter or comorbidities. Take care, everyone. And I hope Christmas was good to you. And I hope the new year will be too. Bye-bye.